The Chancellor was dealt a disappointing blow from the latest GDP figures. They showed sluggish growth in the UK economy in the 3 months from July to September. GDP rose by just 0.1%, even less than experts had been expecting. And Rachel Reeves had to admit she was not satisfied by the slowdown, which some have blamed on her budget, claiming companies held back on spending decisions until she delivered the outlook late last month. More from our political correspondent, Carl Dinham.
The Chancellor visited a firm working on nuclear fusion, the holy grail of energy production today. Her own target, to get the economy growing, is more immediate and also pretty challenging because the latest figures show it flatlining.
I'm not content with the GDP numbers that we've seen today. If everything was fine, we wouldn't be taking the measures that we are to try and unlock the growth that I know exists in the economy but hasn't really been felt, either in living standards or in the competitiveness of our economy these last few years.
Economic growth has been slowing from 0.7% in the first 3 months of the year to 0.5% in the second 3 months to just 0.1% in the 3 months between July and September. But at the pub down the road from the Chancellor's visit, they say her budget is making it even more expensive to do business and the price of a pint will have to go up.
It could go up anything between 20p and 60p. The breweries are already putting their prices up. We're just lagging behind a little bit.
And what would happen if you didn't raise your prices?
We'd be out of business. It's literally, no one can cope. You can't absorb that sort of money.
And the Tories claim the Chancellor's own gloomy assessments contributed to the poor summer growth.
Very weak and worrying, actually. And I think what that speaks to is that when this government came into office, it talked down the economy. Now, that was all part of its plan to then go on and jack taxes up in the budget.
The Chancellor says she's bringing stability to the economy, yet businesses like this gin distillery are still concerned about what might happen if the United States starts to impose tariffs.
The US is a very, very important market for us. Margins are thin because competition is very high, and a 20% increase in the import costs of those for our US customers would be very, very difficult for our US distributors to stomach.
Getting the measures just right in the economic cocktail was never going to be easy, but it's only been getting harder since Rachel Reeves became Chancellor. Carl Dinham, ITV News, Westminster.
Our economics editor Joel Hills joins us from the pub we saw in Carl's report. And Joel, the Chancellor says she is disappointed, but how much should she take the blame?
Well, the National Institute of Economic and Social Research and the Confederation of British Industry are also pointing at pre-budget uncertainty this morning. The key question is, did business investment fall in September in response to what the Chancellor and the Prime Minister actually were saying about the economy? The evidence published this morning suggests actually it did not, and that although firms took on fewer workers, that actually that's been the trend for much of the last 2 years. The Chancellor doesn't think she's to blame at all. She points out she was talking about the tough but necessary decisions she needed to make and has since made, and that it's onwards and upwards from here. There are reasons to feel optimistic about what happens next. Government spending is set to boost activity. We've seen inflation pretty low and interest rates have started to edge down. But a lot does hinge on how businesses respond to the big tax bill that the Chancellor gave them in her budget. There's talk of higher prices, there's talk of recruitment freezes, there's talk of lower investment going forward. It may be the Chancellor's budget does have consequences she didn't intend, but it's too soon to tell.
And Joel, we also heard about companies concerned about the prospect of the incoming Trump presidency. That could have a major impact on our economy this side of the Atlantic.
It could. Look, Donald Trump seems pretty serious about imposing taxes of up to 20% on all imports into the United States, including from Britain. Now, the Chancellor said tariffs would mean higher prices here and in the United States. We do not know if Trump will do what he says he will do. We also don't know how the British government would respond. Would it retaliate with tariffs of its own if he does? But the Chancellor was sounding upbeat this morning. She was talking about trying to secure a free trade deal with the United States. That would be really quite a coup. But it's worth noting that talks with the Trump presidency in his first term failed because the British government refused to accept imports of things like chlorinated chicken and hormone-fed beef. Rachel Reeves says that ban would still stand.